start over.
All right.
All right, I'd
Let's
like to
start
call
again.
this development committee meeting to order, 3:35 on the 23rd of April. Kathy, would you take roll real quick?
Lee,
Here?
Walter,
Here.
Carter.
I'd just like to say that Ms. Carter did send me a text to indicate that she was not going to be able to make it, so.
Myself included, and for the record, Mr. Fulton's here, Mr. Hicken is here. Stand for the pledge. Alex.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll dive right in. Scotty, any update on Scenic View?
I have been speaking with them since our last meeting, and my recommendation before they submitted anything was to make sure they had everything right and go over it with a fine-tooth comb to make sure when they do submit that that's what they want to go with and it won't be piecemeal. So at this time, they're still in the process of revising based upon development committee comments. So nothing at this time.
Okay. Well, we'll hopefully next development committee meeting, we can wrap that up. I speak before Kathy gets on me there with my microphone. So we'll dive right into the comprehensive plan, chapters 1 and 2. So we've put it out to council for any feedback. We're going to take this chapter by chapter, like we said we would. Did receive comments from one council member. After reviewing those and talking with Mr. Fulton and Mr. Hicken, I think that those are, I think we all three agreed those are more section 3 and 4 comments.
You mean
So,
from
Mr. Jefferson,
Mr.
yeah.
Jefferson's, yeah.
So we're gonna just save those for later. How about that? They're great comments. They're just for the next discussion, I think. I reached out to Mrs. Carter, and I think Mr. Hicken, correct me if I'm wrong, you spoke with her as well. She did not have anything to add to 1 and 2, from my understanding.
You know, I'll be
At
honest.
this time.
I'll be honest with Mr. Lee. I didn't ask her about that.
Okay,
I spoke to her about it, and then I conversed with her about the fact that she couldn't make it,
yeah.
and I neglected to say, "Do you have some comments for me to pass on?" So I didn't discuss that with her.
I didn't hear back from her, and I assume that maybe she is not feeling well, and we'll just put it that if she wants to add to it later, we can do that, and or in a council meeting when we give an update. So I had one thing, but we'll skip that. Mr. Walther, we'll go to. So before we start on this list, I just wanted to just have a quick discussion amongst the four of us. I've looked this over. I think we've all looked this over. I know there was some confusion on when we got it or when we didn't, but basically, I don't know that we want to. Do we want to go through this point by point? I don't think we do, but I think if you're good with it,
Well,
go through the ones that
yeah,
there's questions on.
I would say absolutely, because these are notes. I mean, they're not,
Right.
they weren't put into, you know, I didn't, try not to write too much.
Well, I mean, I know that this is what I believe this is what we were tasked to do. We talked about that, but I think for, after reading this again, maybe we can just kind of work through it, skip the ones that we can just,
Some of them are just basically edits. I mean,
Exactly,
like,
that's what I'm
hey,
getting
these
at.
numbers don't make sense. They're not gonna be anything you or I are gonna answer. They're just bringing up points that say, hey, this doesn't work between this chart and that chart.
yeah, and that's what I just did. I sat down and I went side by side, and a lot of it is exactly what you said. So, while it looks daunting,
It's not that bad. Do you mind if I just kind of start?
hop in.
One of the things I wanted to do, and I wanted to make sure, you know, this has been a long process.
Yeah.
We, looking back through all my notes and stuff previously, I wanted to make sure that we keep a very focused scope of what we're trying to do, that we don't go one way or get down a rabbit hole or something to that degree. So what I tried to do was say, look, I wanted to make sure that I was able to comment about the plan that we have in front of us right now. I mean, I reread it again, and every time I reread it, it just becomes more and more apparent to me that we, contrary to what maybe OHM would say, I don't think we have a final product. Final product per that scope or any other scope that they would have thought they were doing. So that's one thing that I wanted to bring up here is, you know, I don't want to use the right word. Disappointed is a good word. That we're working with something, that we're starting off with something that isn't a finished product. I mean, there's so many things in here about proofreading and editing, and the chapters don't even work together in essence. So I'm wanted to bring this up in this manner because I know, Tommy, you want to do like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. But this thing is you take the whole thing and put it together, and it's got to make sense. You know, for instance, the
Sure.
goals and different things in the back. I mean, you get to the back and you start reading the goals, and it just doesn't seem to work with what has been put in the other chapters. So that's why I brought this up. Was I wanted to make sure that we had a discussion about how we maybe want to go through this, because it's kind of like I don't know, reviewing for a final, a year long class. You know, you got to study the stuff that's current, but you got to go back to the first, you know, weeks, and you got to go back to the second weeks and so forth and review all of it to get it to all come together. That was really my main point of this. The other part of it is I wanted to take on kind of a first discussion of, you know, how do we get staff involved, and Tim and Scott, for discussion on how we get staff involved in these reviews. I don't necessarily see this as the development committee coming up with all the comments and then providing them to everybody. I kind of see it maybe as the other way, coming to the development committee so that we can sift through the comments and then insert them or make recommendations to council if these should be included. I'm not trying to take control of the committee or anything like that. I just want to make sure we're not spinning our wheels.
No, I think before we dive into this, I think a conversation is warranted to make sure, especially since, you know, we have Mr. Hicken on board now.
Yep.
And I definitely want his input. So I think that's a good point, and I think the point is valid that maybe it doesn't. You know, I haven't gone through the whole thing again, so I wouldn't know if the back end of it. It's been so long since I went through the whole thing. I don't remember how the back end works with the front end. I focused on 1 and 2, and maybe I should have done that different. But I guess a lot of the things, and I want to open it up to Scott and Tim here, but a lot of the things in your notes I think are pretty easy to guide Scott. But we'll get to that. So before
If I could just rephrase this, I don't know if it's our job to do. So that's what I'm getting to. Is this our job to do this, or is it staff's job to do it? Because I don't want to go through this thing. I don't want to go through 6 chapters
right.
and edit this whole thing. And this is not narrated or authored by, you know, the development committee.
No, I understand, and I think, and I'm gonna turn it right over to you, Tim. I think we have, based off of we've got Chris and CJ, which they're working on the water and sewer part, and I think that once we get the report back from the Strand, is it the Strand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then that's where Alan will come in there, and I think Scott's our Tom Brady. I'm not gonna quit using that. Now we have Tim on.
He did change his haircut
Yeah.
too.
Now we have,
He
you
tried
got
to be
Gronk,
Tom
by the
Brady.
way. Did you see that? You got Gronk.
I do.
Yeah.
Came out of retirement for me.
Anyway, and then Mr. Hicken. So I agree. I think we are getting staff involved. Maybe the discussion is how much more. So Tim, why don't we? I'd like to hear your comments and your thoughts on this.
Well, I guess I have a couple. The first one is, I think having staff compile it is perfectly valid. I don't have a problem with that. When the comments, the other thing I have not done, and it's the same thing you haven't done, is I haven't gone through side by side with the plan and looked and said, okay, that's easy. That my anticipation was that if you believe that the plan is that bad, I think it is going to be incumbent on you, or it's inherent in most of our being, that we're gonna try to fix the darn thing. And I don't think that's what council wanted, but I don't know. If something that is this, I wanna get the statement out and then I wanna make another one. If something that is this voluminous or appears this voluminous is really a simple find and replace, and that work can be done not at the open session committee level, but compiled and done simply, then I don't think I don't have a problem with that. But, and what was I gonna say, the thing I didn't wanna forget no matter what, was, I'll think of it.
We can come back.
And you start off with, if you think it's this bad.
No, I think, so that goes to my concept of,
Okay.
if you think it's this bad, if anybody looks at this and says, this is this bad, if you're like me, and some people are, we're all professionals, or we all will wanna change it. And so the changes that are gonna be coming forth in the comprehensive plan are going to be wholesale and massive. And for me, that's not where I was. If council is there, if council wants a full rewrite of the entire comprehensive plan, that's a little bit different than I thought it was gonna be. Because these look voluminous, now maybe they are not. The other thing is, I remember what I was gonna think of, is there's lots of suggestions in here. To ask staff to compile it means you're gonna ask staff to, because we're focused on this, I don't wanna make it like picking on Andy. So let's just say Tommy says, I absolutely think this page should read at the top key instead of contents. Now, if we're asking staff to compile that change, is it up to staff to accept or discard it? Is that what you're talking about, with staff compiling these changes and being the, so if.
No.
I imagine not.
You know, so if I could clarify, so when I put in here, I suggest, or I would think maybe this would be the right way, that's for the discussion portion of this. What I feel is for staff to look at is to suggest, how do you, so one of the things that we talked about at the original meeting of this was providing more of a foundation for the comprehensive plan. More than just saying it's a 7-person steering committee, or it's a couple of you know, we did do some outside, you know, we gathered some information from some outside sources, so forth. But I put in here specifically some specific items that I think should be reviewed for a comprehensive plan. I'm looking for staff to say yes, they agree, or don't. That's kind of, should we use the environmental items such as the protective water source map? Should that be in here? Should that be evaluated as part of the comprehensive plan? Should the soils types, floodplains, environmentally sensitive areas, should all of that be evaluated for the floodplain and be talked about at all in the floodplain? Is it missing in the comprehensive plan? I know we're going past 1 and 2, but that's an example.
But that's a significant rewrite to this plan.
Yes, it is.
So council and the development committee should know if that's what they are undertaking.
And that's where, like, my first part here on objectives is to talk about, because Mel's comment was ground level. I don't know if we can get to ground level. Ground level is everything and its brother. You know, we're incorporating all information into this, you know, type of thing. I don't know if we can get there. That's a lot of work, and I think Aaron from OHM said, guys, that's an expense that is triple. You know, that's a
Right.
huge dollar figure for them to do something like that. I don't think anybody's asking to do that necessarily, to get to ground level, but I don't want to get down the path and know that we're at 20,000 feet and people are thinking we should be at 5.
I think, and she did say that, I think, I took it just a little bit different.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember back to the meeting, but I think she kind of flipped it, because I know exactly what you're saying, but I haven't had a lot of conversations with her, and I don't want to speak for her, but, I don't know that she meant it that way, but she said that. So I think we do need to bring her back into that. But ground level, like you said, I mean, that is daunting. And I don't know that that's what, I mean, this is a guide. I think that the one thing about it is I think that it's a working document, the way I see it. It's a working document, and it's not the end-all be-all. I don't see it as policy. I see it as just as a guide for the staff. So that to me is not ground level. I'm not gonna put an altitude on it because it'd be a guess.
But that's a great comment though, Ty. Your comment's exactly what I was trying to understand exactly, because in here, for instance, in chapters 1 and 2, they flip-flop between guidance and policy. It flip-flops through here, and sometimes it says guidance, and sometimes it says, this is policy. You know, so we need to, that's a really good point to say, which do we want it to be? We should be very clear on that, on which we want it to be. And so my second paragraph when I wrote this out was, you know, I tried to put the scope as I understood it. You know, this process is a deeper and more specific Pataskala view, supplement details as well as inclusion of stronger foundation items to reflect what council feels is the right guidance. And I put in here guidance for future Pataskala development goals and preferences. So that's what we need to define, is what do we think needs to be in here for that foundation.
Yeah, and I think that your point to the guide, policy, all that, those are the easy ones, I think, that are the ones that we can go back. Now, as far as, if we're gonna get into that part, I think that that's a council as a whole discussion. As far as, if we're going to define a mission or you know, that's, I mean, I guess we could make a recommendation to council, but I feel like that's a discussion on its own. I mean, I almost, you know, in more so than just a discussion after, you know, committee chair reports. You know, I mean, I think it's deeper than that. But before we dive into this, though, I wanna give Scott the opportunity. Is there anything you wanna add to this? Any thoughts on the staff involvement or anything that's been discussed so far?
Well, initially, I was under the impression, when we talked last time, that Development Committee would get me their comments, I'd get council comments, I'd compile those, add mine, and we'd go through it. And now it seems like it's switching that we're not doing that anymore. Staff come up with everything and tell us. And that's the difficult part, because then I'm just assuming what Development Committee or council wants. So I think having a clear, concise mission from who's doing what, just so it just seems like it constantly evolves as we go through this process, that I don't know how I can do this, how to do this successfully, if kind of the goalpost move.
And I think that's fair. Do you think that based off what we've tasked Chris and I'll say CJ with, and eventually Alan with the infrastructure part, the roads, and then you as kind of guiding this, I mean, do you think that that's, is there any other staff that we need to bring into this other than what we've already got involved? And Tim, Andy, anybody hop in there? I don't know that there is.
I mean, we can talk to Lanier about parks, if there's anything he sees within this that parks need to be updated, but no, and then I guess to play devil's advocate, what if staff said this is fine by me?
Well, if I can jump in, I mean, we've got you know, two very, very highly educated professionals on staff to work on this. We got a city planner, we got Scott. I mean, these guys know, they work with this kind of stuff. I feel very confident that if there were questions asked, you would be able to provide answers. You stated that you were gonna compile your comments. I haven't seen any comments from staff on this. Are they in our packet?
Yep.
Okay, well, great, I hadn't seen that. Was that sent out earlier?
It wasn't, because I got no comments until just later today, so.
These are your comments, or these are Mr. Epperson's comments?
Mr. Epperson's
His are on the
comments
front.
are 3 and 4, so those are not included, so these are my comments from
Did you get this, Andy?
chapters 1 and 2.
It's this one. Front and back.
Okay, I think I got it, yeah. Okay, so I haven't looked at that yet. Okay, great. Well,
So, my thought is, and, well, let me back, stop for a minute. Do you have anything on that discussion?
No, I think we need, so Andy hadn't seen those. I hadn't seen his. It seems to be like, the plan was to ask for comments to go to a centralized point. That centralized point would compile them all. And what my suggestion might be would be, and then get them to, we'd have to set the deadline a little bit earlier. Get those back to the development committee, so that we come ready to discuss each individual one. I don't know, Andy's seemed much more
yeah. I'm-
I don't know.
Well, what I tried to do is I tried to make sure that if we're gonna address 1 and 2, that we don't come back and, on 4, and come back and say, oh,
No, I
we
get
gotta change that.
I actually, I do get that. It's, but I don't think that prevents us from looking at them. But I haven't had a chance to go to see where the rubber meets the road with these and go, because you said yourself, they look daunting, but they're not as hard as you think. And if,
Let me give an example here.
Sure.
So on page 3 here, on my number, whatever it is, 2, number D, on page 8. You know, this document does not conform with our last zonings and our council meetings that have gone through zoning process on a case-by-case basis. This doesn't say that. This is, so, Scott, I'm surprised, I glanced at your comments quickly, but I'm kind of surprised that you didn't pick up on a lot of these items. I just am. Because that's what I'm hopeful that you're looking at this with the idea of your experience in Pataskala, what we've been going through in Pataskala as far as zonings and so forth. You know, it says in here very clearly in either in the first or second chapter that, you know, small, densely planned housing developments are what we want, because that's what the demographics are starting to go to. That's what
It says what the demographics are going to,
well,
which
it
is
says it's
accurate.
stronger than that. It
That's
says
an
it's
accurate
stronger than
statement.
that. But whatever the case is, I think those are the things that I'm looking for, or I'm hopeful for, and maybe I'm completely off base here, but that's what I'm looking for from staff to look back at this product that we have and say, guys, this doesn't work in Pataskala, or this isn't what council has been doing in the last 2 or 3 years. That is definitely a part of this.
But Heron Manor was approved as a cluster subdivision with small lots. The properties on Mill Street were large lots, wasn't approved.
And
So
both of
there's
those were
no
stated
clear
case-by-case
direction.
basis.
There's no clear direction from council as we move through this. So it says demographics are switching to this, that's correct. But it says council doesn't want this, I don't know.
Okay.
Well, I think before we move on, we need to vet out here a little bit more what our direction is, because I think I don't think we can move on without having that. I am more than happy because, again, going through these, and once I started reading these, I realized that even though it's on a different page, I've seen most of these before in your other list that
Yeah.
you've given me. So it was a little easier to read once I dove into it and said, oh, I've seen these before. What I haven't done is taken your comments and, well, I did just now, but prior to this meeting, and went side by side with the comprehensive plan. So, again, before we dive there, I wanna make sure we're all on the same page. And I do think Scott's point to, whether we are or we aren't, I don't want you to feel like we're moving the goalpost. And I think before we move forward, we need to make sure the goalpost is set where it needs to be. So, and because I know how that feels, and I'm not saying that we're doing that or not, but if you feel that way, you feel that way. So let's work through that. I think that's a fair point. So, I guess up for discussion on everyone here is, are we looking at without getting into this and seeing that some of these things are very easy, are we looking to wholesale this thing? Or are we just gonna give Scott comments and he's gonna come back to us and they're gonna plug and play them as we go and then we take it back to council? Or do we need to go back to your point to council and go, what's council wants to do? Do we wanna do a wholesale review, or are we just basically giving our 2 cents on this, and then when they get we have a workshop or whatever on this if we have to, they can see the comments and then council can go through it line by line and go, I don't like that, or I like that suggestion. To me, it's the first one, but I mean, I think also as I look at these, we all have backgrounds in different things, you know? You see these for a living, I don't. So you're gonna look at, when you read this, you're gonna see things that I don't, and when I look at it, I'm gonna see things you don't. You know, my one thing for tonight was the greenways, the discussion on the greenway part. And it was just, is that the direction we wanna go type thing. So, where do we go? I mean, I feel like that's a council decision.
I'm gonna say absolutely, because I'm not gonna, the amount of time it takes to put something together like this is a
Yeah.
lot of time.
Yeah.
And to do this for every chapter,
Yeah.
and it not be the way the council wants to go, I'm not gonna spend that time.
Right.
But I can tell you that my opinion is, every chapter needs this and then some. I mean, chapters 1 and 2 are easy.
Right, and that's a
In
whole.
fact, chapters 1 and 2 are the easiest.
Easiest, that's a good way of putting it. 6 might be easy, the goals, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but period, there's not a lot of issues within 1 and 2. It's just how much do we wanna include? You know, do we want to talk, more than just, having, 895 recipients to a certain questionnaire? That seems like we need more than that for a foundation for a comprehensive plan.
And I would say this, and I think, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think that this can be presented as we've begun to get into this document, we've begun to see different varying levels of where comments that people have on it. We're looking for a little bit more clarification. I don't think there's a problem with that. I would like to take these comments and look at the plan vis-a-vis these comments, and also meet with Scott and talk a little bit about the philosophy stuff that Andy brought up. I don't know that I'm quite where he was with vis-a-vis what I'm expecting out of the planning department versus what I am expecting comments from the elected officials about the comprehensive plan. Nonetheless, I'd like to have an opportunity to talk to him, one-on-one, looking at these, and also look at these back and forth, so I can get a feel for hitting me cold. It looks like a lot, and I agree with you that this is the easiest portion, and it had to be a significant amount of time.
Well, for instance, when we get to the future use plan, and you start looking at, I mean, I've already started gathering pictures of different examples of how this future use plan and what the existing is out there, and they don't match. So, I mean, it's just a question, here's I guess the bottom line. What do we want this comprehensive plan to be used as? And 10 years from now, do we want anybody to rely on it or not? I mean, that's really the question that I'm struggling with, because what I see here, I mean, and this was the scope, right, or whatever the agreed to scope.
It was the scope and what we had enough for.
Right, is probably something that I would say is something that Scott can turn to and talk about during zonings, but it's got so many contradicting points and pieces to it that I don't know how anybody relies on it. I just don't. That's my opinion. And Tommy, you're right. I have more. This was like when we were going through interviewing. You've done a lot of that. You knew about that. You knew how to get 4 or 5 questions put together in the right manner. I don't know. Never done that. So this is just something that I pay attention to, and not that anybody doesn't pay attention to, that I see every day, that's not the right word, but, you know, I see it every day, and I live with it, and believe me, you live with it. And I'm hopeful that my goal, when we approved this a long time ago, was to come out with something that was unique to Pataskla, and really showed that our development opportunities are understood. We know where our preferences are for them to be, and here's why. And we have reasons behind that for those. It's just that simple.
So let me chime in on that, because I think that's a valid point. And I guess where I am is, I see this as a guide. And I don't see it as a end-all be-all. I think it's a guide. I felt like when we went forward with this, while I do agree that it could have been handled a little bit different, that's in the past, and that's not here to deal with anymore. But I envision this as we go through it, we clean it up, we make sure it doesn't contraindicate itself, and we make, every council member has an opportunity to weigh in and make some changes. And yes, you want it to be, you know, you want council 10 years to be able to use it from now, or from now, I got tongue-tied, to be able to use it, but the city's gonna be different in 10 years. I want it to be a document a living, breathing document that can be updated. And, you know, just like code, something doesn't fit, something that fits now may not fit in 5 years, and we need to go back and take a look at it. And I think that we do that in other parts of the city a lot, with code. You bring us stuff, hey, this doesn't really work, and can we take a look at this? So I think, I'm looking at it to be a generalized guide that as we grow, it can be amended and updated. So, yeah, I want it to be good for 10 years, but it can't be good for 10 years because we don't know what 10 years is gonna look like. So, I guess, yeah, I don't want it to contraindicate itself, but I also don't want to make it so complicated that it becomes burdensome.
And that's great. That was exactly the conversation I was trying to get into anyhow, because here's, and Scott can weigh in on this, because this road is well-traveled. And so what happens is when you bring if I'm not in Pataskla and I'm bringing a development into a certain city, wherever, the absolute first thing that is either stated is it's either agrees with, if they have a comprehensive plan, it's either in conformance with the comprehensive plan or it's not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And that is the absolute first statement most of the time.
When you look at zoning, what do you want
Yeah,
to do?
okay.
Where's the property, what it's zoned?
It's right in there.
Then
It's one or
it's
two.
like, if we need to rezone it, what's the future land use map recommend? You said it
Right.
recommends this.
Right.
And those properties exist all over the city.
Correct.
Right? They're almost
Anywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
They're all
So,
R87s or.
and so the biggest issue that I have with a comprehensive plan is, and that's just fine, that's great, if it's stated as, hey, this is recommendation of the comprehensive plan, it isn't in compliance with that recommendation, and here's why. Kind of more, but typically what the report comes back is, it's either in compliance or it's not, and that's all they say. And as Mr. Dominy had mentioned, and I asked him this twice, that future use plan by itself can be pulled out as an independent document, and it's a legally binding independent document. It's been in court cases. It's something that is, and so for me, if we're gonna make this a guide, then make it be a guide. That's fine. Let's talk about our preferences and talk about the good, why you would have something here and why you wouldn't have something there. That makes more sense to me than just having a future use plan that doesn't have any basis. That's not quite, has basis, but it's only because of preferences by some residents, some not residents, who put it together.
But with that being said, once we get, and that's why when we get to the future land use map, hopefully, and I know Chris and you and I, the three of us talked, hopefully by the time we get to that, which I'm thinking is probably a month, we'll have the infrastructure part to be able to make a better decision on what should be what. The map's up there for everybody to go look at.
But it isn't really important to change the map until you understand, until, at least for me, this is just my opinion,
Right.
until I understand where the soils are, where I understand where the utilities are, where I understand where Strand's report says it's gonna be. Because if we're gonna put dense development across the street here,
Yeah,
but it doesn't have the infrastructure to support it,
right,
then that's not a very intelligent future use map, right?
right, to a point. But to me,
Or
like,
roadway wise.
here's one
We've had that
thing,
problem.
one thing for me where I want to see the infrastructure, but I don't know that I don't feel like we need to go as far to do the soil part. I think that's more, I get it, yeah, if we had 300 grand laying around to go out and do those tests.
All we gotta do is no, they're already done. I mean, I'm talking about using the soil conservation map.
It's
Yeah, I'm not-
It's analogous to Chris and
Yeah.
CJ's.
Yeah.
They're already in existence.
Yeah, it's just
okay,
another layer.
I didn't know that,
It's just,
so,
it hopefully is another layer to a drawing that we can slice off the
Okay.
layers we want.
so it wouldn't be a cost to us to go out and have to do a bunch of soil samples.
It's,
and-
remember when we were talking about the
Yeah.
ones on Mill Street, the lady came in, she had her soil map,
Oh, yeah.
she showed us what was good soil and what was bad soil. We should know what's well draining soil and what's not well draining soil. That's a piece to thinking about your comprehensive plan, typically.
I have, so in my mind, I always saw additions and changes as part of the living document additions. When I was on council, I was much more interested in what Andy has already said, which is, Scott, is this functional for you now? And while I think Scott would, I don't know, Andy said it, he thinks it is functional, right?
It's functional for me right now, correct?
But clearly, I think that most of the people would say that there needs to be some changes within the plan itself. I think all of council has at least made.
My biggest problem is with the future land use map.
Well,
And I don't think we can
okay.
make a determination on that. till
And that
we
may
go
be,
through it.
and I think what you're gonna find, I think what I anticipated hearing was that Andy would be, or I'm sorry, Tommy would be really interested in the future land use map. Andy would have other in-depth things because of his qualifications. Todd Barstow might have something else, and those would be the series of things that might get changed or added as the document went through this phase. And then the other things that might stick in your craw, or yours, or Mel's, would be added to the document as a living portion, meaning that the work would continue on the document, forever, essentially, because it's a living document. And I think what for me, and admittedly, I was out of the loop, so I don't know if it left that realm. It may have, and it may not have, and I think that's why it's good to, that's why I think it's okay to go back and ask. I would say, I like I said, in the interim, I would wanna talk to Scott and ask that kind of functionality question, but also the question along the lines of, are there things that we need to go in there and look at and compare? Take the comments. I got no problem with Scott and I looking through these comments and having a good discussion about it. By the same token, I think that, I'd like to hear council say, do you want this massive rewrite? Yes, or do we want a hybridization thereof?
Yeah, and I think too, I think it's a great point, and I think that, I know you guys haven't had a chance to look over this, but I think for tonight, I mean, and we can go through this exercise and you can stop me at any time, but, I feel like based off of, the comments that are here and the other ones, well, we don't have any other ones, but we can talk quickly about the Greenway network that I want to bring up, but when you compare Andy's comments for just section 1, not section 2, because there's some things in section 2 I think we need to vet out. That to me, I look at and I go, no problems, let's just go ahead and, it's basically, table of comments, no arguments for me on any of those 3 points. I mean, that's cut and dry, we can be done with that.
Where are you, Tony?
I'm on table of comments, page 2 on Andy's comments. Like, yeah, look, makes sense. So, I don't feel like we need to, that one there, I don't think we need to spend any time on. I mean, they're just cut and dry, good catch. Move on to chapter 1, 6 through 15. I did all those side by side and I went, yep.
Well, let me just talk there, under my table, I did add in one thing about switching order, and I don't really care that much about order, because nobody's gonna, I mean, let's be honest about it, nobody who isn't just bored out of their mind is gonna read this whole thing from front to back. They're gonna go to chapter 3, because that's where they wanna pick up that information. They're gonna go to chapter 4 to get that information, whatever. I only put this in there just because it's one of those things where I think about it, and you think, okay, how does this book come together? If you really wanna write a story, which is what this is, you know, how does this come together? That's all. So you could ignore some of these, you know, switching I really don't care. It's just, it was just something in my mind. I put it down because it seemed to make more sense. If we want to if we want to have something that, you know, if we want to go through and do a wholesale, like Tim has mentioned, if we want to change this thing and put it in, we should look at both the fundamental aspects of the comprehensive plan, how it reads, what story is it telling? I don't disagree with you that some of these are really simple and they're just, hey guys, this didn't make sense. This doesn't work with this statement. That doesn't work with that statement. That's stuff I think that absolutely Scott and his crew can figure out and get it to work.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, I don't think that, based off what I've read and side by side, I don't see any reason why we can't, as long as I would want Scott and Tim's opinion. I can personally, speaking for me only, look at just section 1 and go, I'm fine with that, and move, and we can call section 1 a day. And report back to council that, hey, we've got comments, we're gonna tweak section 1.
That's taking development, that's taking Scotty's department's stuff.
Scott's and Andy's, and I don't even disagree with when we get to section 2, Andy, I just have some questions.
Sure. No, I didn't expect for you guys to agree with with all of it.
But I gotta be honest
Much
with
of
you,
it, quite frankly.
but be honest with you, all of your comments for section 1, I don't disagree with, and I don't have any questions on, so.
Some of them are theory, some of them we're gonna have to talk, you know, again, this case by case idea, and how do we verbalize that in our plan? How do we do
The
that?
only thing though is I would be reluctant to do case by case. I mean, it is a case by case, but then we're kind of back
Well,
to where we started in the sense that I meet with developers, they say, hey, we're thinking this. I say, looks like you can move forward, I think you're on the right track. Then we get to council, nope, which is what I'm dealing with. That is like, I don't want to do that anymore. And that's the thought, that if we say everything's case by case, we might as well just use the old one and continue on how we're doing.
or have none.
But we need something, or have none, but
Or have
it's
none.
like,
Right,
at
I
this
agree.
point, when I have no clear understanding of where council wants to go, what's acceptable and not acceptable, we're just gonna do this exercise where we'll spend a year working on a development and then get to council and, yep, that worked, or no, that didn't, and I have no idea why.
Couldn't agree with you more.
So that's why I
So
want
that's just
something
something
that,
in phase 1, maybe there has to be some, or, I'm not phase 1, but in chapter 1, maybe there is a discussion where these are the priorities that we want to emphasize that are good priorities for Pataskala. This is what it's not a case by case basis, but it's not governed solely by the future use plan either.
and it's not, I mean, I think they mentioned that these are recommendations, and that's why there's the
Well, but-
blur lines.
Yeah, but Scott, I'll disagree with you there, because they also say that any deviation from this plan should be highly scrutinized, and I'm
Should.
using different language.
Should be highly scrutinized.
Well, I may even say must, but I'll see what it says here real quick.
Should.
I'll see what it says. And that's dangerous.
I would disagree. It should be considered. If you're gonna look at everything around it and done something, and they're coming in with a project that's very similar, and you wanna deviate, you should look at why you want to deviate and what are we accomplishing. So it should be. It doesn't say it has to be. And that goes along with this being a guide. In no way, shape, or form is someone comes in and said, hey, if you build this here, you're golden. I only say, you know, you're on the right track, or this might be difficult. So there's a lot of the shoulds, it's a guide. You know, it's made clear, that's why with my comments, my one, it says should. Instead of shall or must or anything that's, you know, the end all be all.
You looking for something, Andy?
Yeah, I'm not gonna find it right now. But
So,
that's okay.
so let me ask this and Scott, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate you being, we need to hear what you need, cause
This is not personal.
no, not at all.
Not at all.
I like this because we need this. I need to hear that. We need to hear that. So, because you're the one that's gonna be, you know, mostly using this. So I appreciate your comments. Andy, what do you feel like,
Let me ask.
go ahead.
You say that you're fine with everything in section one. Where does section one stop?
It stops on, are you talking about in the comprehensive plan, or on Andy?
Yeah.
So look
6
here.
through 11, it's section
Right
1,
here,
or
Tim.
chapter 1.
On page 4, it starts, I'm stopping there. So it's
Oh,
basically
no.
these pages.
No, that's fine, that's what I see.
I guess what I'm getting at is I feel like we can at least accomplish tonight, again, this is me speaking, I feel like I feel good with chapter 1. I do wanna have a quick discussion on the Greenway, the concept of it. But I think with Scott's comments, Andy's comments on section 1, we have nothing else from council. I think we can proceed with that and move forward and say, you know what, we got section 1. And we go back to council and say, you know what, we didn't go into section 2 because we want a little bit more direction from council. So we got through section 1 and we stopped, took a time out, and we want direction from council moving forward on what you want. That's where I'm at right now.
So with that said, let me just ask a question, because I don't know where Scott falls on this. And the last item at the bottom of number 2. Overall, this chapter switches between guide and use without clarity, giving selective teeth to the plan's contents and direction. This is specifically noticed on page 8 under how to use the plan. 3 doesn't expound on that anymore. That's just a straight up statement of we switch between guide and use. So is it, when you say you're okay with that, are you saying that it should be guide or it should be use?
I'm a firm believer this is a guide.
And is that what you meant when you put it in there?
I just wanna make sure we have clarity, because that's exactly the point is, if it's a guide, if it's a should, if it's a, hey, you know what, this is just a piece of the puzzle, okay, that's a guide. If this is use, and it has to take careful consideration if there's any deviation from it, or whatever the case, whatever the language is exactly, then that's a use. I just wanna make sure we're saying the same thing consistently throughout the report, or through the plan, saying what this is for.
But do you have a gut in what you think? Do you not care?
What do I believe? I think this is a guide.
Okay.
I think it should be a guide. I think it should be written in a way, okay, since you ask, I think it should be written in a way that is malleable, that can change with how we do things. I think that, and I've used this example a couple times, there's a few comprehensive plans out there that have targeted development areas versus exact outlines of what this is gonna be, that's gonna be, this is gonna be, that's gonna be. And those are all targeted development areas based on utilities, it's based on soil, it's based on all the things that are part of the fundamental foundation of the plan. I think that's the way I would love, if I were the one, you know, waving the magic wand, that's how I would want the comprehensive plan to be. Something that gives inspiration, it gives aspirations, it gives Scott definition.
It wouldn't. if you say it's a targeted area for, because I looked at Worcester's, it says residential. What's that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that mean? It's like, oh, these are large lots, these are small lots, this is a skyscraper? I don't know. Okay, we're doing residential. Well, yep, that 30-story condo block, that's residential. Then we'll go through this process again and get to council and say, no, why would we even do this? And bloop. So, I need something that has more specifics, that targeted areas, and we can, I don't think saying targeted areas based upon roadways, water, sewer, et cetera, availability of electricity, these type things, I don't think it's bad to base some decisions on that, but if we just say it's an open-ended, targeted area, that does me no good.
So when you say you need something for what? To make recommendations on whether a zoning is approved or not approved?
I don't make recommendations on that.
To interact with the developers when they come in.
When they come in, they say, we're looking to build this concept in this area.
But you do make recommendations. You make recommendations to planning and zoning.
No, I don't.
I thought it said down at the bottom, staff either recommends or doesn't
Nope.
recommend.
So we just say, these are, if we say, if you choose to approve this application, here's some modifications you may consider. So we say, if you're gonna go that direction to approve it, we say you might wanna consider these. So when reviewing this, if I'm sitting down with a developer and he says, I want this particular product and this location, at least they have some idea of you're on the right track or you're not. Because if we're gonna put, that 30-story condo block out off Headley's Mill, you're probably not gonna have much success. But if you're looking to put it in where, based upon this, would be the new town center area, I think you're onto something. Let's explore this further. And most of the time, developers, what they want to know is, do I have a chance or not? That if there's no way this is gonna fly, just tell me now. Because then we go through that process, and they're out time and money, and then we go through the process and, doing the meetings, getting reports, all those things that if we know it's not gonna happen, I think everybody would benefit more to know right out of the gate, I don't think this is gonna happen. I mean, it's their right to say, you know what, I'm gonna plow ahead and do it. Awesome, we'll facilitate that process, but I need to have an idea up front when I meet these folks, because anymore, they say, what do you think? And I say, I have no idea. I have no idea how to steer you in the right direction.
So you're not looking for a guide,
It would be a guide to say, I think you're in the,
but you're using this as a use.
no, it would be a guide. I think you're moving in the right direction. I'm not gonna say, yeah, you do this, you're approved. You say you're moving in the right direction, developing this type of product in this location. And if that's based on infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, et cetera, I think that makes a lot of sense. But, to have it so open-ended and abstract, that makes it really difficult to guide these folks in the right direction. So that was kind of the impetus of, we had the other plan, some of those things, and it was a little over 10 years, some of those things were no longer valid, that I said, we should probably look into updating this. So probably in 10 years, 10, 15 years, we'll probably need to, do a whole-scale rewrite, or as we move along and say, even if we say this particular concept, we thought it was gonna work, and just like we do with code, say, that didn't work. We need to amend this section of the map to go in this direction. This seemed to work better. And I'm not opposed to changing this and working through it, but just something to get us off the ground will be very beneficial. And I think once we get the impact fee stuff, we now have the service area agreements. I think that helps us quite a bit, because even some with the service area, people will come in and they say, well, who do I talk to? I don't know. So now that's defined in here, that I can say, that's Pataskala, here's what you need to do. Or I can even say, Chris, they're looking in this direction, I'm meeting with them this day, will you come and talk to them about water and sewer? So that helps make those initial meetings very fruitful, that we all kind of know a direction. So that's what I need. Having those added things with the impact fees, infrastructure, water and sewer, that's good, but I need a direction.
Do you think it would be, and I know I don't think the contract with OHM states it, but, if the work's already done, do you think it would be a problem to have them go ahead and plug in the soil stuff as well?
No, soil, it wouldn't be difficult
Can
to
you add-
install a soil map.
Can
No.
you add that? Can you?
Yeah,
I
we can
think
add
we
the
can
soil
agree
map. That
on
won't be a problem.
adding that in there.
Well, you've jumped ahead to a new section.
We have, but I think if we
Yeah.
start, no, not really, I don't think we have, because we need to do everything we can now, in my opinion, to prepare for that section 4 discussion, and if we don't have that part done ahead of time, then we can't have a discussion, just like the water and the sewer and the stream. That's why I jumped ahead, because I think that's, if we're gonna use that as another tool, let's start working on it now, so a month from now, when we get to 4, it's ready to go.
You know, while we're on that subject, I also wanna make sure that the two council members here may already know, so this may not be something that the council has to be asked. But in my discussions with Scott, our concept of this is there's not a constant request or tasking of OHM until we get to the compiled changes.
Well, there's gonna have to be one. Well, maybe not in the word part, but I think that the stuff that Chris and Alan and now the soil stuff, we're gonna need that sent to them and updated to have that discussion.
And I'm gonna bounce that off you then.
Yeah, I could have them add the soil map, and then once Chris and CJ get their information over, we have it in place, that way when we get to the chapter, we're already considering that.
I think
And
what
not
we
saying,
agreed
yeah.
on was this stuff, the making sure it doesn't conflict, and the wording part, that would be a wholesale thing at the end. But the map part is gonna have to be
Okay.
prior to that.
You're talking about gathering all the information so we have it to really talk about that section when we get there.
Yes.
Actually,
absolutely.
I think what he's thought, and what you're saying is that OHM would take those things and recreate that section with all those addendums to it. And then that's what we would look at. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but that part, yes,
But
but
only for
only that, but say,
section 4.
say we say, okay, section 1, we're done with this comment and that, I wouldn't expect to see OHM update this with that
Yeah.
until the end.
And
Yeah,
that's
please
exactly,
don't,
and
right.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what Scott said.
Yeah,
So
please
I
don't.
just wanna make sure
Yeah.
that,
Because I think you guys may come back with different, you may
Yeah.
come back and say, you know what, Andy, your comment number 2F is crazy.
Yeah.
And especially because of chapter 3, page 49 says this.
But the map, yes, I think we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think you could include a couple things in there. I mean, I think that one of the important pieces, CRA, those areas that are already designated for development credits and different things, that's a map that would be good to have.
Actually, that's in
We
my,
already have it.
well, that's in one of my comments on the updated map upstairs,
Yeah.
is to create actually a different color
Perfect.
to identify the CRA.
I think that's, when I start thinking about comprehensiveness, that's comprehensive.
Right.
That's saying what it is, where it is, what is the preference for it to be? What is it now? What is the preference for it to be in the future?
Right.
And as long as everybody, and I keep coming back to Ann Rogers saying, oh, the comprehensive plan's a preference, it's just a guide. We listen to that like it's, use. As long as we all know that, and as long as everybody understands that, I can switch gears and say, okay, let's make this a really great guide.
Well, can we I don't know that we can, I feel like, and Tim, if you don't mind, can you put your, I know I'm gonna do this to you a bunch, can you put your council hat back on for a sec, and just to recall, but I thought that's what council, when we started this, and Scott too, I've always thought that all along, that's what this was a guide.
That's what a comprehensive plan is. It's a guide.
well, I guess my answer to that would be yes. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's just make sure it says that.
And I think that's perfect.
I think that's what some of my comments are pointing out,
Yeah.
is let's make that very, very apparent and very clear that this is a guide, And, you know, it's a comprehensive guide, and it's not just a map, but we've utilized all these other things to put this together, and that's why this map has a foundation, and that's why this map makes sense. It's not just, hey, this area over here would be really great to be a park, or whatever, or multifamily, or industrial.
I'm
Okay,
writing
cool.
like a madman over here, I'm writing all kinds of crazy notes, so.
So with that being said, do we feel like we're in a position, as a group, not just a committee, I wanna hear from everybody, that we think we can take these comments and feel comfortable with section 1?
Why don't I do this? I'll revise, so with all that in mind, with this discussion, let me revise the comments for section 1, because I'll take some of the stuff out of it that won't be appropriate for, if we're going down that direction. I have no problem doing that, it'll take me 10 minutes.
If it only takes 10 minutes, yeah, I feel bad.
I don't mind doing it. This was the whole purpose, this was the easiest one, as you said, and I wanted to bring this up, this was purposeful.
So as soon as you get it done, send it.
Okay, I will.
And then what I can do is I'll provide comments, like you said, it's like I agree, disagree, we can get stuff from staff.
Yep.
And we'll do that compiled list, and then next time I can send it out, and then next time we meet, we can go over and discuss it, and go from there. Cause that way I can say, I agree with this edit, I don't agree with this edit, here's why, and we can go from there and leave it open, cause then you have staff comments, and then you can make decisions based upon that.
So then I don't think we can officially, with that, and that's okay, I think we need to, I can report to council that we've, with section 1, we've sent in the appropriate edits, and then we still need to look at that one more time as we move on before we say it's a done deal.
Yep.
With respect, what I would recommend that you tell council is how this conversation evolved.
Right.
That, you know, we actually got into this discussion about, are we talking about first of all, there's the wholesale rewrite question, but more importantly, I think where we've evolved to here is looking at this as not as a shall and use, but a should and guide, and make sure council knows, I mean, you're probably gonna get tacit nods of, okay, yeah, that's probably what you're gonna get, but at least they know that's what this meeting entailed. And so that's what I would.
And I was gonna go there, and I'll tell you where else I was gonna go with council too, regardless of this discussion, was I think I know what the answer is, but I wanna put it out there. For feedback is, what we kinda talked about already is, do they want, not necessarily a pretty colored OHM document, but do they want to see this section by section as we revise it? Or do they wanna see it at the end? As one official one completed, this is the review of the development committee, and this is where we came from. If they want,
That's my thought.
Can I make a
that's my
suggestion?
thought too.
So how we did the charter review the last time was exactly like that. We went through the whole thing, and it was section 5, whatever, or 3.04, and it had the original language, and we put the proposed new language. And then we went on to the next, and that helped, I think, everybody understand what the changes were. And they also made it so that you could look at page 2 and page 22 and see that they worked together. There was a reason that this was done that way. I absolutely think that all the chapters should go at one time.
I do too, I just think we should ask them.
And not only to them, for them to edit, but for them to look at and make sure is, you know, because they're the professionals.
Right.
I mean, they're the ones that are, you know, the specialists in this. They should not take our comments as absolutes,
Right.
but should push back, just like Scott does, push back and say, you know, I don't agree with that. Because Aaron will.
I'll just be honest with you, my concern was much more from a fiscal standpoint, at least. I agree with everything that's been said, but I didn't want, and I don't think Scott did either, one of our concerns was, we'll burn out the PO if we constantly go back and have them, doing stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't want to do that. My
And that-
goal was
that-
to
well,
be.
let me clarify, because that's not what I'm saying, is to
Yeah.
keep going back to OHM. I'm saying council after each section gets something like this, our comments from you, or something, well, I should probably say something like this. These are the proposed changes to section 1, after each section. Or, I would prefer having it all at the end, but I wanna give them that option and have some discussion on that. I'm not saying go back to OHM after each section, that's too costly.
Mhm.
I didn't think that's what, I just wanted to let you
Yeah.
know, part of where I was coming from.
Cause something like this, I know it'd be a little bit more work, but again, it might be easier for some people, and it is, something from you, from the development committee on something like this, these with what you said.
Cause my thought would be.
Pages 6 through 15, these are the proposed changes. After, maybe they don't want that, maybe they do.
My thought would be, we compile the comments, we say, change these 3 things, don't worry about number 4. I come back and say, page 6, paragraph 2 originally said this, supposed to say this, and just go through like that. So here's all chapter 1, here's all the changes. Then at the end, when we go through, and I'm taking it back to OHM, there's the document to say, make these changes. And then when they make the changes, I can go through and make sure the changes were done accurately.
I agree 100%. Absolutely, Scott.
Mm.
But I just want to clarify, because I think we're saying the same thing a different way. Do you do that section by section or all at the end with council? We'll do it section by section, that's for sure. But I'm saying with council, do you want to give them the opportunity to weigh in on the changes section by section? Or do you want to give them the opportunity at the end? And I think that's a question that we need to ask them. Does that make sense?
It does, because my thought is it goes through development committee, council tasks development committee to review it, development committee vets it, here's our changes, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we can ask that question, but
Mhm.
I think, what I feel is gonna come back is,
Go ahead and do it.
you guys do it, send us all the comments and send us the revised document, and then we'll go through it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree,
I think that's, you're
Yep.
right.
but I feel like
I think it's
We
perfectly
should
great
ask.
to ask them.
If you're making notes on this, Tommy, the other thing, I don't know, I would kick it out to the people here. If we're already identifying things that we wanna put in section 4, do you wanna, 7 heads are better than 3 or 2? Do you wanna kick that out to them as well and say, just so everybody knows, we're already looking ahead at comprehensively putting these use maps, or these, whatever you wanna call them, into section 4. We've identified this. If anybody can think of anything else, let us know.
that's exactly what I was talking about. But and you wouldn't know this because it was in your limbo period. I've been sending those emails out.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And telling council, hey, we're talking about section 1 and 2 tonight, please, that's where, Dustin's comments came from. And I also put it out to them, I probably won't put anything out after this meeting, because we're still in 1 and 2. But I've put it out to council that Scott's got the big map up. Come in and look at it, and any recommended changes, he's doing the documentation and writing proposed changes, and by which council member. Am I the only one so far, or me and Andy?
I haven't come up and changed anything.
Yeah, you're the
I
only one
haven't, the
formally.
only reason why I haven't is because I do want, I'm kind of waiting on getting some of this other information.
Yep.
Because I wanna be able to, I don't wanna make a recommendation that doesn't make sense.
Right.
That isn't based on, and I'm not saying you've done that at all, I'm not saying that at all, I'm just saying that for me, for my head, I've gotta look at it and say, street type, utility availability, soils analysis, is it in the, do I wanna put, some type of industry in a protected water area, that kind of stuff, because those are all important aspects to me. I gonna disagree a little bit with Scott. I think there are ways we can do some generalized areas, for instance, conservation areas. I think that there is a way to do generalized conservation area, and that's based on what's already in conservation and/or around environmentally sensitive areas. Doesn't mean we have to take our line and go, this is exactly where the conservation area is gonna go, but we already have large parcels that are dedicated for in perpetuity conservation,
Mm-hmm.
those would be great areas to build around as a targeted conservation area. Doesn't necessarily have to end up on the future use map, but I think there is at least a discussion about that, more so than what OHM put in here originally. And that could be, hey, you know what, there's 90 acres here. If the-
That's a permanent agricultural.
permanent. If there's a way, if there is a desire that somebody wants to add to, wants to do something conservation-wise, these are areas that they should look at to add to this conservation area. I think that's an important discussion. Granted, it's vague, it's not saying, here's our line, here's exactly where it's gonna be, but I think that's an important piece to a plan.
I don't know how it's enforceable, or any way, I mean, we could say you should do this.
So again, you're
But-
back to enforceable. See, we keep running in and out of this guide
Enforceable may-
versus use.
There's no way to make, aside from the person making the choice to do that, or the city buying it and doing it, or some other entity to do that, there's no way to put it in an agricultural easement without someone
So
making
if somebody
that
came,
choice.
if somebody came to you and said, okay, I am a philanthropist, I have billions of dollars.
Mhm.
Or, let's say we get a huge user in our park,
Mhm.
and part of their deal is they always wanna do something for the community, and they want to increase a conservation area. Wouldn't it be good to have that in the plan to say, this is a good place to target for conservation? That's all I'm talking about. I'm not saying it's enforceable. I'm not saying that that person who owns the property adjacent to the conservation area is deemed to forever be in conservation. That's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is if somebody came to you and asked you, where would be a good place to buy property if I wanted to put it in a conservation easement, this is a good place to do that. No different than if the 30-story
Condo block?
apartment complex, where would be a good place to do this? Well, this is the area that we've identified as a preference for a 30-story apartment complex. If there is any possibility in Pataskala, this would be where it would be. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's enforceable, I'm not saying that we're deeming it to forever be that, but as a guideline, as a guide, that's where we would put it. And based on the reasons, these reasons, there's already conservation there, there's no public water, there's no public sewer, the street is 16 feet wide, all those reasons. The soil's terrible, it drains terribly.
Mhm.
Those are all good reasons to put something into a conservation area if you desire to be in a conservation area.
If they desire, I just don't know that it's realistic.
Well, I look at some of this you're right, some of this is not realistic.
Mhm.
It isn't in there now realistic. But whatever the case, I'm not gonna argue that point.
So speaking of unrealistic, can I bring up the one thing I wanted to talk
Green
about?
money.
You've got, well, let's see. it's
Sure.
quarter till.
We won't go past 5, we'll just call it that. I think we're in a good place to move forward.
And I'm perfectly fine going on to 3 and 4 too. I mean, there's no reason not to ask for
Yeah.
comments in 3 and 4, right? Or is there any reason not to?
No, there's not, go for it. Start sending them, the sooner the better. I mean, I don't think we wanna go into that, I'd like to just do it
Not a
progressive.
scheduled discussion, but
Yeah, but
if
if
you
you
got
wanna
time
send
to
them,
do them, send them.
send them.
Sure.
And that map's a huge part of it. I'm with you on the map, by the way, is, I'm very familiar with my ward and with downtown, but the northern part of Pataskala, most of my comments you'll see are my ward and downtown, because that's what I know. I don't know a lot of the, I may have more changes to the map when the other parts come in.
I think the map is one meeting by itself.
Oh, maybe
One,
two.
maybe two.
I would agree.
But
And
I'll
it's-
save that one for later, but, I know Scott and I have talked about this, and I know we eliminated the bike paths, and I'm not a fan of the greenways. I don't, when you look at the map, I'm looking at it here on page 77 of the plan, I know it's later in the plan, but the reason I'm bringing it up in section
It's
1,
referred to. Yep.
because it's referred to,
Yep.
is, even though it's not bike paths, some of the places this thing goes don't make sense in my mind, just knowing the city. And instead of picking at it and saying, take this one out, I guess where I'm leaning, unless there's pushback, I just feel like we take that out. I don't see the benefit to the plan with the greenways. So, I'm not going to go there because it's later, but Scott and I, we've had the debate about the percentages with the maps and all that stuff that I'm not a big proponent of on the, you know, when you get into the lot size coverage, but that's a different discussion for a different day. But I kind of see them in the same as, you know, like you go up here or anywhere, I know it's a guide, but you take this big swath of greenway through all this good farmland up north. I mean, you're telling them, you're saying, look, you know, there's not even any trees there. Do they have to plant them there?
Well, I think what this does, the purpose of this is, and maybe I'll jump into Scott's shoes here for a second, but when somebody comes in with a development on the parcel that happens to be impacted by the suggested greenway, then Scott's answer may be, look at page 77. You know, the comprehensive plan has a greenway going through this parcel you're looking at developing, and we want to make sure there is and this doesn't really give a lot of detail, but let's just assume that the greenways are defined as 50 feet wide. We want you to put a 50-foot wide, in your plan, you should, maybe said shall, but I don't know, it should, have a greenway in here because it says so right here. May not make any sense to the parcel next to it or the parcel on this side, but that's what this plan says. And that's what you would, I mean, Scott, tell me if I'm wrong, would you refer them to this and say it's recommended that a greenway be placed across this parcel? Because it shows up here on page 77.
In the greenway, originally they included portions that
Oh, yeah.
could have a path.
Yeah,
That didn't go over well, so we said, get rid of that, don't even mention path. So this would be areas of tree clusters that we're looking at this property, the northern boundary has a cluster of trees. You should try and save those trees. Property to the north develops on their southern border, that same cluster, once it goes over the property line. You should try and keep that cluster of trees, so there's connected green areas that they're not disjointed. So they all work together. So if you look at and there's a tiny picture under the green square on page 76 that you can see, here's how those green areas would work together. So it flows together throughout the city.
I see that, but my point is okay, maybe there's a couple places on this map that it might make sense, like up the Muddy Fork. But if you go up north, I don't even know whose property it is, but let's just call it the one that goes east to west and crosses Quarter Road. There's not even any trees up there now. So do they have to plant those and put them in?
Mm-mm.
No, I think a greenway includes open space, does it not?
It could include open space. I mean, and this is where when developments come in, they say, I know there's 20 acres of trees, I gotta take out, I need this 5. I know it's a green area. Then it could say, tell you what, if you wanna take out the 5, what if you plant an additional, tree line over here? So there's those discussions that happen with any project.
But my question is why do we even need them?
If we took the arrows off, would that make you feel more comfortable?
The arrows?
Yeah, the green arrows that says Greenway? And just have areas of park open space, surface water, floodplain, tree cover.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
If we take the arrows off, because there was some discussion with the steering committee, do the arrows then imply paths still?
You're talking about the whole line though, not
you're
just.
talking about the light green or
The light green arrow.
the lime green line
Correct,
with arrows would be removed?
correct.
This one.
Yeah,
You're talking
You
about
take,
all
like-
the lime stuff, lime green.
I just don't see the point in it.
but we can, and there was a discussion with steering committee, and they chose to leave it on, even with the concerns over the paths. So I said, why don't we take it off? They said, no, leave it, just no path. Don't mention it's gonna be a path.
Well, that would be, I'm curious Andy's input, but that would be a proposed change for me is to remove those.
It's fine by me.
I don't know how you feel about it.
again, this, if we talk about, so in the page before, in the little green highlighted section up here,
Right.
they go through a very nice discussion about what greenways are. And if you get the chance to connect greenways, it should be done. Great. That's a great guide. That should be an aspiration.
Mhm.
I
For
think so
development.
too, but I'm with you on that, but
This gives you like, okay, that parcel owner right there, he's got a greenway on there. You know,
Right.
I think this goes maybe a little bit too far in as
I'm all for
guiding.
greenways, but I don't think we designate them on a map. I think it's a case-by-case basis,
So the arrows go away,
in my opinion.
and we'll just leave the
Leave all the
surface
rest,
water, floodplain, tree cover, park, leave
Yeah.
that criteria,
yeah,
so we can still use this as a guide, but remove the arrows.
that's my recommendation.
Fine by me.
You go with that, Andy?
Mhm.
Timmy?
Um,
I wanna hear it. I wanna hear your,
I personally don't see a problem. All right, I'll just say this, because I was on council at the time, and I was here for the
Open house.
path discussion.
Yeah.
And I thought it was silly. I thought it was very, Sturm und Drang would be the word in German, very concrete. Instead of taking the concept of saying, these are the general areas where there may be a path or something, instead of saying, oh, okay, everybody that came in looked down to the mini pixel and said, I don't want a path on my property. And
You can't put a path on
you
my
can't
property.
put a path on my property. And the people, both the steering committee and Aaron said, that's not what this says. This is a visual reference of where we've identified areas along a creek. And they absolutely could not get past it. They were concrete about it, and I see this as the next step of concrete. That you're looking at it like, well, you even said, I don't even know where that goes up on Quarter Road. I think it's almost like the darn lines on the green arrows are still too defined. I'd want them to look like clouds or something, so that it didn't look
bubble
like
it all.
So it didn't
Just
look
bubble
like
it.
a path, because look, you right there went right to path.
it's not,
And I know, but it's an arrow, and I think all our brains are trained to go path, arrow. Now, do I think it damages it by taking it out? No.
see, I don't look at it, I see what you're saying, but I don't look at it that way. I look at it like if these, this lime green followed the Muddy Fork up or you got that, and then over here off Headley's Mill, and connected all these tree covers, they do, but the ones that go across vacant land, it's like, I just think that it misrepresents what it's intended to do.
Fair enough.
I'm gonna go one step further and say, I'm concerned, and it's not about Scott, it's about the next person that's interpreting this 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, whenever, saying to somebody, oh, your parcel falls right there on Cable. Ah, that's right where we had planned on a greenway. So you've gotta put a greenway in. You know,
Which is also not the purpose.
which is not the purpose, which we don't wanna have happen, that's not the idea here. So, I think if you take it off there, you're gonna relieve that issue.
And I think in a weird way, Andy has just absolutely flipped it and just put a different person in charge of looking at a path
Yeah.
and the concrete concept.
Yep.
Somebody that's got in the future, isn't willing to just see, there's a green, he wasn't here, whatever. And so he goes, I'm sorry, you need a greenway there.
And it's 50 feet wide, and it's gotta have trees, and it's gotta be whatever.
Some poor guy's trying to, all right, I get it. Fair enough.
That's a recommended change. And so, with that, I think, is there anything else that we need to talk about regarding this? Or do you think we're done for the evening and we can go watch the NFL draft? Hopefully my Browns don't screw it up again.
Amen.
Don't count on it.
I can't wait.
There's two things you can count on in this world, death and the Browns screwing it up.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form.
In some way, shape, or form. Who knows about taxes? Obviously, they prove that you don't have to worry about taxes if there's a
If
virus.
there's a virus.
So you
that's-
can't, but those two things I guarantee you, death and the Browns will screw it up.
On a lighter note, the High State's been killing it on the recruiting
Well, it
chair.
certainly have.
But with that being said, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. You got a second?
Second,
Lee,
yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you,
guys.
Kathy.
Yep.
Scotty,
Thank you,
thank you.
Scott.
No problem.